Conversations. Once again, I am Charlie, and my co-star here is Al.
Hello.
And this week, as promised for the last, 2 episodes now, it is the man in the high castle.
Yay! Fireworks.
Cheering. Finally.
The world is happy.
Finally, we've got onto it. And I'm not sure if you'll probably be aware, but we have now started using our new condenser mic. So hopefully, we should be coming in crystal clear now. Hopefully, we should. We've upped the ante and got better equipment for you all. You should be you consider yourself so lucky to be treated so well on Morlock Me.
All 12 subscribers of you.
All 12 subscribers.
Thank you so much. We love you.
So yes, basically, so we're going to start off. I think you can kick it off this week.
Yes, I watched most of the series, and I read the book. My attitude was that they could almost exist as separate entities because they are so different.
Absolutely.
So it's very, very hard to draw a reasonable comparison of the two. So I'm gonna start with the book, I think, and then we can mould it in. I really, really enjoyed it. I liked I'm a big Dick fan. Oh my god! Even as that was coming out, I knew how that was gonna sound.
Obviously, Philip K. Dick.
Philip K. Dick. Who
is the author of the book. If you haven't got that already, I think that's a bit of a Freudian slip there. But
bad start.
As we can just clarify, Philip K. Dick is the author of The Man in the High Castle. So if we refer to that in future, you'll know what we're talking about now.
So I am a fan of Dick and his work, and I particularly enjoyed this. I think I thought it was an original idea, and then I looked around and I saw that there was other stuff that dealt with what if Hitler had won the war. But this seemed to take an original angle, which was the kind of sci-fi alternate universe perspective, which I enjoyed a lot, actually.
And I think it's good because it was written in 1963 and it's based in 1962. So it was written sort of in the era in which, essentially where you could look at life at that time. It wasn't sort of looking in the past, it wasn't looking in the future. It was essentially looking at the time in which it was written, but in a sort of different dimension, which was quite interesting, I can imagine, because it was sort of considered possibly his finest work, like one of the finer pieces, most notable pieces that he wrote. And it's obviously easy to see why, because it's a really interesting book. Like, I love the element of all the politics and sort of like essentially the sort of race to who's going to take over from Hitler, who's obviously, I think he's syphilitically incapacitated, which is always very interesting. And then there's obviously the element of Frank and Juliana, and then Joe's character, and I think it's very interesting. But it's interesting to see the comparisons.
What I liked particularly was the fact that he brought in the sci-fi element as well into the kind of the way that the totalitarian state is moved on to colonizing Mars, and how fast the technology has come when you oppress everybody. I really enjoyed that, and the fact that I think they've drained the Mediterranean to make it into farmland as well, which I thought was a really interesting idea. And also I was reminded a lot of 1984 with the kind of the not knowing what was going on in the rest of the world. There were references to other events that had happened, but there's never a clear kind of this has happened here or this has happened here. There's always mention of something that went on in Africa, but not really explained in any depth, which I think is really good, because obviously in a police state the media is completely controlled. So I really enjoyed the way he sets up the totalitarian state, and I like the fact that there is in fact a Cold War going on. Kind of all eventualities would have led to a Cold War in the 20th century almost, but between Japan and Germany.
Yeah, I think it's it's quite funny to think of it as a sci-fi in a sense, because you sort of would read it and go, well, it's sort of not. It's sort of like a sort of, I can understand obviously why it's been categorized as a sci-fi, but you could almost sort of put it as like historical fiction in an odd sense, because it's so well written, warped historical fiction, but it's written so well, and it's not like, and you sort of could actually believe that that's what happened, because he's gone into such depth and he's really sort of thought about not just like the whole idea that it's the Cold War and there's like what's been split up and sort of elements to it, but there's the whole elements of the politics. There's the elements of what the people are thinking, what the resistance is all about, and sort of the essential like underground revolution, and also the sort of essence of there are traitors and what they're doing and how they're doing it, and sort of all the ins and outs of it. And I like those intricate sort of little details in which they've put in, because he has actually created our world, obviously in 1962, but pretty much how it probably could have been, to the point where it is very believable.
Yeah, I really also like the fact that he's so up to speed with relevant scientific advancement of his day as well. The idea of the alternate universe, and it's not an in-your-face theme that's there. It's just a kind of suggestion, and the idea that these kind of the Japanese reading the hexagons or what that can help you to access kind of other realities. It was really I was really fascinated by it.
Yes, I did love the element of the whole idea of the man in the high castle's distribution, which was the grasshopper lies heavy, which I just thought was fantastic, because it's the idea that it's like what we sort of encountered with when we're talking about Gonga with the diary, the fact that the written word is what's revolutionizing people, and what's changing their perceptions, and what's making them fight for something that could have been, and it's so funny to think of it as like all the things like the elements that would change, like the fact that Hitler was caught at the end and tried, I think with Goebbels and Goering, I believe, for war crimes, and it's like and he sort of it's kind of like I think it's maybe not, I'm not saying it's closure, but it's kind of that sense of like how we would have probably wanted it to have ended. The man who caused such suffering, such pain and such heartache was caught, and was it's kind of possibly for him, maybe for the author, like maybe sort of like a letter or like a nod to, because he's obviously he did live through and he served in the war, the Second World War, and so it probably was maybe like a sort of an homage to all those people who he fought with, and who he left at home, and who he probably saw killed in action. It's sort of like a restitution to them, to sort of say, this is how it should have ended, which I think is really, it's quite poetic in the sense, because it's in the novel, it's what is making people get up and fight for their human rights, is the fact that what essentially happened in real life is essentially causing these fictitious characters to be very strong and stand up for what they believe in, which I think it's a lovely sort of it's essentially it's a very touching tribute, I think.
And on that note, I think we should move on to talking about characters, because I'm really fascinated by a lot of them.
You've sort of been itching to talk about this, haven't you?
Yeah, I loved Juliana in the novel.
Absolutely.
And I hated her in the show. Weirdly.
I have to very quickly talk about the show, because we rinsed the show very, very briefly, because the show can take about 5 minutes. So obviously we wanted to do the in-depth because it is 10 1-hour episodes on Amazon, which is, I think, very daring, because I think a lot of people, especially for a brand new show, might think an hour per episode, 10 episodes, is a bit of a struggle. But it's I was very interested to watch it. I was interested to go into it. I personally was very disappointed. If I'm completely honest, I was not happy, in the sense I didn't like that they changed the Grasshopper Lies Heavy to a film, and not just as in a tiny little film reel or whatever, or like probably well, they obviously couldn't, but in the big old like metal cans that they'd carry around the film in. So you kind of think, how could that be distributed round people?
Well, how do you even get hold of it? How do you?
And I'm sure not everybody's going to have. Well, back then, I'm not sure everyone can just go like Juliana did, to just go downstairs into the room and happen to come across their projector.
Let me just pop into my cinema room.
It
was one of those.
And it's just kind of, I thought that element of it, it was very lovely in the sense that it was like you could see like the American flag being raised, and you could see Churchill, talking about, we will stop at nothing to defeat them and stuff like that, doing all these amazing images. But you kind of sort of think, I know it's obviously a sci-fi, and I know there's obviously things that can fabricated, but you're thinking at that level in time, and the fact that they're probably as advanced as they were in reality, 1962. How could they have got those images to make such a film? That's sort of, I know that sounds, I'm getting a bit nitty gritty, but I sort of feel like that sort of takes away, because I know it's obviously this man in the high castle is very mysterious and makes these sort of propaganda movies, but I sort of feel a book is a much more believable and also realistic way to spread propaganda. You'd give a book, you'd publish a book, you'd get, I don't know, 100 copies and send them out.
As indeed Hitler did with Mein Kampf.
Exactly. And so, which is obviously, they've seen it in history, and so they've replicated it in the book. However, in the TV series, just the fact that it was one film or maybe two being distributed around, you're kind of like, oh really? Like, oh. Well,
I think the way propaganda works, as is shown historically, is you've just got to get loads of it everywhere.
And the fact that it was only
penetrating your subconscious. With in the Second World War, the Germans were literally dropping bombs on London full of flyers that said you're going to lose. As a way of trying to. I mean, it's a bad example because Blitz spirit, we didn't give in.
It's quite good because you did read it and just sort of think like, we beat them and stuff like that. It's quite funny. But
it was heartbreaking to read about them sacking London.
I know.
I was just going, no.
You sort of read about it and just are like, you sort of want to put it down and go, but it wasn't real. It's not real. It's all fiction.
It didn't happen.
But no, I sort of felt that detracted from the whole idea that it's this dangerous resistance that if you're found to be part of it, you're going to be shot, and it's like, utter like suspenseful, and yet it's like they're fighting over maybe a reel of footage or. To maybe if there's another one out there. I only, from what I watched, it was only one reel of footage, but I sort of felt that would have been in itself a bit of, people dying in vain essentially, because it's like if it was loads of copies and they were churning it out, then fair enough. But I just felt that detracted from it. I just sort of felt that the Amazon, the screen TV TV adaptation, because I don't know if everyone gets Amazon Prime, I don't know, but the adaptation I just felt really lacked the heart of the book, and I think because they didn't go so much into the politics. They did bits of politics, but I think they lacked that, and I think that's probably what they should have really been concentrating on. And I just felt that they wanted to concentrate more, that there was this like this overly Hollywood done like love triangle between Frank and Juliana and Joe, and it's just like, oh really?
Yeah.
Considering the material you've got, that's what you're basing it on. So
well,
I think
they did away with the struggle for really to retain your identity. In the book, there's that struggle to retain a personal identity and a national identity.
Yes.
And in the show, I feel like it was very, yay America.
Oh yes.
And if you are American and listening, we love you. But it created this sense that inherently every American has a sense of freedom.
Yes.
Which I know is part of the national identity, but in the show it was just, well, every American believes in freedom, so they're just going to see this film and rebel. Whereas I feel like in the book, there's more of a survival instinct amongst the characters. They want to stay underground because, if you don't stay underground, there's a very real risk of getting shot.
Yes.
So I think in the book, that struggle to still find your own identity, meanwhile kind of you're aware that something's not quite right.
Yeah.
I found that a more compelling concept than just we know freedom is something that we should have. But no, I liked it, and I liked in the show as well. I think it had some very good action kind of
there was
sequences.
there were some interesting bits, like I did think in the first episode particularly actually, where Joe's driving the lorry and he gets stopped by the police officer, and he helps him, I think, change the tire or fix the tire, or something goes wrong with one of the tires, and then suddenly the ash starts falling down on them like snow.
Yeah.
And Joe's sort of like, what's going on? And it's just the fact that the police officer just so nonchalantly being like, oh, they're just burning the disabled and old people down at the hospital. But so casually done. And I think that was just that. I don't know why, but I was just like, that's brilliant, because it's just the way in which it's like he's an American man, but he's wearing the Nazi uniform.
Yeah.
And yet he's just accepting what's going on. There's no horror, there's no shock, there's no upset, there's nothing. It's just an acceptance of, which I feel there's, like the whole idea of the Oppengruppen, I can't even remember how to say it now, Oppengruppenführer, I think that's how I've said it right. I think it's John Smith, I believe, who is played by Rufus Sewell. I think I'm saying that now. I don't even know if I'm saying any of this right. I hope I am. I did German at A-level, so I really should know at least the German side of it. But I thought that, like, characters like that, where it's like the Americans who are American, who've been American through the war and stuff, who've just accepted the way of... It's the sense of, like, the national pride sort of being slightly confused.
Yeah.
And the idea of the freedom, it's like they believe they're free, but they're under the German Reich sort of, like, power. It's like they're not free Americans. They're essentially, in a very large prison. So I quite like the aspect that they really do play off the Americans being proud of the Nazi get-up in a way in which they're just so accepted. Like, it's just like, yep, this is what's happening, and that's it. It's just the way in which it was done, I think, is very, very good. I may have just gone on a little bit too long about that element, but but I think. But there's just the characters in general. I think we should get onto the characters, because I want to talk about them, because there's so many plot holes, I feel. But I
was really angry with what they did to Joe.
Yes.
I don't know.
I don't like that they kept him as an American. They made him an American.
Was he not an American in the novel?
He's an Italian.
Oh, was he? Okay. But no, I liked him in the show to an extent, but I think the romantic triangle was just, it came across a bit unbelievable. Yeah. I think they would have had different priorities.
Absolutely.
Which come across more obviously in the book. And I think Juliana in the novel is very independent.
Yes.
She although she kind of gets this sort of dependency on Joe in the novel, she eventually kind of just takes herself away from it and goes off to find the man in the high castle. Whereas in the show, it seems like she sort of needs to have a man in her life to kind of cling on to, who's going to look after her. And I don't know.
She's like independent in the sense where she makes the decision to take the film and go and carry on her sister's work, and she's very like adamant about it. And you're like, at first I was like, brilliant. I was like, good. They're making a strong female character in a world that is predominantly a very male cast. I feel it's very patriarchal. It's very dominated by men, which is and I was quite excited because it's Juliana's she's a woman who's really probably not on paper a very strong independent character, but it's her character that makes that, and I really like that. And it just was very disappointing that it just fell off on the TV series. There was like, she was a bit independent, and then suddenly it was like, oh, actually I'm torn between which guy I like. And you're like, oh, well, isn't that convenient?
You're carrying possibly the most important piece of information in the world, and you're torn between Joe and Frank. I didn't like also the dynamic between Frank and Juliana in the TV series, because obviously in the book they're like estranged, they're married, they're estranged, they do their there's a different relationship right there. And then obviously in the TV series they wanted to make it all nice and hubbly bubbly and all, isn't it, like the whole idea of, which was obviously building to this love triangle, which was that they're a couple, and he's looked after her since her accident, and she's brought herself back up, and and then it's like, oh, she has to make this decision, and I just sort of felt it really did take away from who they were as characters, because I think if anything, the separation and the relationship they have in the book sort of made
who they are and their decisions a lot more believable and a lot more clearer.
Yeah.
Whereas sort of just what they've done in the I just was very disappointed, if I was completely honest. I was like, it was good in the sense, like, I didn't, like I said to you, I said I don't think the CGI was at its best. I think there's some elements where you're like, okay, considering it's Amazon that's doing it and it's a big project and it's a big, sort of thing that they're doing, it really looked a bit like it should have been on like the Sci-Fi Channel. It was a bit not tacky, but it just didn't look right, which was my problem with it. But maybe that's just me being picky.
I think for what it was, I enjoyed it, and the other character I particularly liked was, I think, although he's so different from how he is in the novel, I liked the way they did Frank in the show.
Yes.
I think they set him up, they developed his character, his sister and his brothers and then her children are dead, and he wants revenge, and that kind of revenge is a very driving force for him. But I just missed the fact that they didn't have all of the kind of the stuff about the antiquities and the antique shops, because I thought that was, I don't know, it made
it's Robert Childen.
Yeah,
that he literally took like a backseat in the TV series where he was a bit more prominent, and it's like the whole idea of his dynamic should have been introduced, but he was just sort of just left as like a very secondary, possibly even third character. So I sort of feel like a lot of the quite good secondary characters, but in the sense of like, there's little bits to them that link up, that always sort of have like, a corresponding reference to each other, was very much just discarded completely, in the sense of they wanted a big baddie, which was John Smith. They wanted the sort of lovers, caught in a triangle with, Frank, Juliana and Joe, and then there was the whole idea of just few other of the Japanese characters, and you're just kind of like, oh, they've literally cut everything out.
It was very Hollywood.
It was very Hollywood.
I think that was the thing. It was very, very
considering how much they had, 10 episodes of 1 hour each long, they really could have got in a lot more than they did.
Well, I just loved, in the book, I loved the kind of the use of the antiquity, and it reminded me of in the US office, there's a bit where Daryl says, do you reckon there's a load of people in Japan with our stuff?
Oh yeah.
And it just made me laugh that these Japanese were becoming kind of so sentimentally attached to parts of US culture, which obviously they're a very young nation.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so you don't really get US antique shops in the same way that you do in kind of the West or in Asia. But so I thought that was a really interesting concept that he developed in the novel, that was just almost excluded. For the bit with the Mickey Mouse watch, I thought was absolutely hilarious.
Yeah.
Like the fact that kind of Walt Disney's stuff is kind of a vague antique of the past that you look at and go, this is ancient American technology. It really fascinated me, and I was a bit disappointed that was so left out. They kept in the
element
forging
of
the guns,
but it's like the element of like the lost world that we know, essentially. Which I understand. Obviously, it was never going to stay the same under the whole idea of the Japanese and the German ruling, but it's just they just completely obliterated it. Like, they didn't include. I think maybe they did bits of it in the TV series, but they really left it out from the book, and I was quite sad because I agree with you. It's like the bit with the Mickey Mouse watch. You do sort of laugh and giggle and go, God, that's our world. That's our life. So I just was the one thing I really did like, which I know is probably going to be completely like, why are you even suggesting this? But I love the title sequence for the TV series. I think it was really interesting.
No, I thought it was really cheesy.
I really liked it.
No.
I thought it was really good. I thought the idea that it was like someone singing, women singing Edelweiss over sort of essentially the lost America. It was obviously very gung-ho. It was a bit too America and little too less.
Over-referencing the Sound of Music, the kind of loss of your homeland. I don't know. It wound me up quite a bit.
I think I quite liked it. I think because it was quite haunting, because you sort of could look at it and go, I think before, obviously, maybe I saw the TV show, I liked it, and then maybe I might agree with you, later on.
You don't have to agree with me.
No, I know, but I think maybe the more I think about it, the more I probably will change my mind. But I did think it was good, because it is that whole sense of Like, I know you say it's the obvious nudge at, losing your homeland and stuff like that, but I think it was good because I think it was that element of that haunting sort of the images and the song. It's kind of like, it does make you think of what would have happened. That's what it instilled in me. That's what I felt.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not saying it was like obviously the best part. I'm just, or it was a memorable part. I just said I thought it was interesting. That's what I thought. I thought about it.
But I mean, there were lots of references to real historical. The shooting of the Crown Prince of Japan, which obviously kind of had parallels with the shooting of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria-Hungary, was very interesting and kind of led really up to the tension. It was a great moment in the series where you go, oh blimey, there's a real potential of World War III to start here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Total German rule. And I liked the fact that it was set in America. Actually, I liked the fact. The fact that there's the neutral zone. That America is big enough that you can have a neutral zone.
Yeah.
Like the states that nobody really wants. That really, I found that really, and the kind of this neutral zone is full of sort of mavericks who, the in the show, the way they developed the bookshop owner, I loved him. I love the fact, and that, I guess you can sort of connect that with the idea of selling antiquities, the fact that he had kind of a Bible and it was not strictly illegal but not strictly legal.
It's sort of like it's essentially, it is no man's land. It's kind of, you don't know what to expect when you get through, and it's just, I just thought it was really interesting. I think obviously as a book it's a fantastic and very interesting concept, but I really just felt that because Amazon had it, and I really kind of hope they do a good job, and I feel they really missed a trick there, because it will probably get a second series. I can only try and hope that it will do well.
Well, they set it up for a second series. That's the thing.
I know.
You couldn't have written a sequel to that novel, really.
No.
But you could write.
It'll be interesting to see how they carry it on, considering the book is not the biggest book in the world. It's not like a Game of Thrones or something like that. It is a small book. Well, not tiny, but it's smaller than you think. And so I'd be interesting to see what they do. But there were different elements, like, going back and seeing John Smith and sort of being at home and being like, he's this terrifying guard that's like, oh, if he's passed out, keep beating him, or like, he was
one of my favourite characters. I mean, I didn't like him.
No, but in the sense of the character.
The way he was, he was slightly one-dimensional, but I think the fact that they brought his family in, and the bit where he was talking to his son, he was talking about the ideology of the state, and I think that was really, really good. But the way he justified his actions, rather than just being a complete sadist, I actually found him not a likable character, but a character with whom I was like, he's a really well-formed character.
It was quite a believable and an odd, like, and like a sort of, you sort of couldn't quite believe someone could exist, but then seeing him do it,
people
you were
did
like,
exist.
Yeah,
like that.
No, of
so
course. So it was interesting, but I personally, for this Morlock Me episode, I'm going to have to say that hashtag, because we are very cool, listeners. We are very cool.
We hashtag. We use Twitter, by the way.
At Morlock Me. I'm going to have to say the book was better. That's what I'm going to go with, because obviously last time we did say the film was better, I believe.
Yes, we did.
So it's sort of like 1-1 essentially.
It is.
Well, for me on this part, I feel definitely the book was better. I feel the TV show just didn't meet up to my personal expectation of the novel. What do you think? I'm in the camp of book was better. Yeah. I think the TV show definitely had some positives, and I'm not disregarding it. I certainly enjoyed watching it. In the comparison department, I feel the novel was a lot better. It was more of an original concept, and that's the thing. It was more of an original concept, whereas the show did feel very, yay America. Yeah. Which was my main problem with it. Yeah, I think it just was made a bit too Hollywood, and that's what let it down. Yes. I feel that's what I feel let it down. Well, there we go. we finally got through it.
Yeah,
The Man in the High Castle is
Castle.
done. We don't have to keep promising you that we're going to record it and then
Yeah.
not record it. Well, that's all we've got time for today. Next week we will be doing The Revenant.
I am so excited
Because
for
it's
that.
sort of Golden Globe Oscar season.
Yes.
So we've sort of planned quite a sort of smorgasbord of the
Yeah.
upcoming. I believe the next 3 we will be doing are The Revenant, which is next. We'll
Yeah.
be doing The Danish Girl, and I believe Carol.
Yeah, I think we're going to make Danish Girl and Carol into a double episode where we talk
Yes,
about...
we'll probably try and make it a sort of an extra long episode because it sort of deals on slightly similar sort of terms and sort of themes. So we'll be doing that, and then hopefully maybe after that we'll try and tackle Room possibly, because I know that's been quite a hot commodity.
Okay, yeah.
But we're still thinking ahead. You know us, we sort of change it every episode apparently.
Keep tweeting your suggestions or posting
Yes,
them to
please
our
do.
YouTube. Yeah. What's our Twitter?
Our Twitter is at Morlock Me. If you want to find us, we're at Morlock Me. Please do give us suggestions. Feel free to use the hashtags. We've got both of them trending at the moment. Well, I say trending on our page, which is hashtag the book was better or hashtag the film was better. Obviously, for this case, we can obviously change it to the TV show was better. Or even in the comments of this podcast, please do let us know how you feel. Any more suggestions? We'll keep coming up with our own, but we'd love to hear from you. And I think that's all we've got time for.
Yeah, thank you very much.
So we'll see you next week.
Bye.